I'm sorry, Mr. McCardle, but I don't have the authority to withdraw reason from the United Nations. And because our town isn't a member of that body, our departure really isn't a possibility. So if there's no other business... Madam Speaker? Oh, wonderful. Madam Speaker? Yes, Mr. Malone. Can you please make this brief? I was hoping to get home in time for the Cosby Show. I'll save you the suspense. He's going to wear a sweater, eat pudding pops, and dance around like a jackass. But I'd hate for you to be bothered by something minor like one of the plagues of Egypt. If it's a blood thin, we're offering a special on 24 packs of Love Canal bottled water down at Walgreens. Very funny. I'd think that as a journalist you'd know about a crisis. What crisis? He's talking about all the beetles, and it's no joke. When I open the pizzeria in the morning, I have to sweep away a mountain of beetle corpses, and they do not smell appetizing. And whenever I go to Sonic, I have to fish a couple of the little fuckers out of my ketchup. These French beetles are a public health hazard. Whatever makes you think these beetles are French or are in any way related to France? They're filthy and annoying, aren't they? For the record, they're called Frenchy beetles. And Emily, why do you have to set 'em up like that? I don't know what I was thinking. For a second there, I must have mistaken him for an entomologist. That's not a very strong comeback. And what about property damage? I have this big yellow patch on my lawn. That yellow patch is there because you had a rusted-out Plymouth Reliance sitting up on blocks for years. You'd still have it if the Homeowners Association hadn't made you remove it. I don't remember that. I do. I was working for a towing company back then, and I had the pleasure of removing it. You hadn't bothered to warn us that there was a hornet's nest in one of the wheel wells, but we found out for ourselves when it rolled out at our feet. That must have been hilarious. Fuck you. I'm still not recalling. Well, time is kind of getting away from us. I suppose I can form a committee to study the problem. We're way ahead of you. We already have somebody looking into it. There's this new insecticide called DDT. It's supposed to be really effective. I propose we buy as much of this stuff as we can, and then we spray the whole fucking county. I second the motion. Motion carried. Hold on, we're not buying anything just yet. But I said motion carried. He did. I heard him. Yes, but he's not a town official, whereas I am the mayor. Rebecca, since you're so enthusiastic, you can get me a price quote on this DDT. Why do I have to do it? Because you've apparently boarded Simon and Barney's crazy train. No, I haven't. I just did a little light research for $25 an hour. Fine, you can get me a price quote at the same rate, but it shouldn't take any longer than 2 hours. So why did you make me come down here? Andy's been bugging me to buy one of these stupid pet rocks for the last 10 minutes. And did I mention that these pet rocks are not only loyal and housebroken, but make great paperweights? You don't want your papers blowing away. I don't need to worry about that. I work indoors. And if I ever do need a rock, I'll just pick one up from the ground instead of paying you $20. This is about the beetle situation. Yes, you were going to get me a price and I was going to approve the purchase. All of which could be done in the comfy and windless confines of my office. I don't usually mind an outing, but I've been walking on a carpet of dead beetles and the bottoms of my feet are coated with goop and crushed shell. The problem is that DDT was banned years ago. Shit, whatever for? It was wiping out the bird population. That's great. It's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Actually, it's like killing 2 billion birds and about 2 million beetles with 1 stone. Birds are a menace. A pair of them built a nest right by my house. They were terrorizing me until I drove them away with a shotgun. Honestly, Andy, a dinosaur your size afraid of a couple of robins? It's not just me. They made a movie about this very issue. The birds isn't an issue movie. Those birds are a metaphor for sexual jealousy. Honestly, between the birds, Cujo, Jaws, and Sharknado, you shouldn't be allowed to go to the movies. They just end up exacerbating your phobia. The world doesn't need birds in the first place. Why do you need a tiny, squawking, degraded descendant when you have the original, majestic ancestor? Well, I'd love to keep talking cinema and zoophobia, but I'm wondering why you called me down here. It's because I found a far cheaper solution. Meet Venkman. Ah! Stop screeching, Andy. It isn't going to hurt you. This little guy is going to solve all our problems. Well, he's a toad, but why did you name a toad Venkman? It's from that new movie Ghostbusters, but Venkman here isn't a Ghostbuster, he's a Beetlebuster. Okay, well I didn't understand very much of that, but I did hear the word cheap, and that's a good start. All those drums of DDT would have cost you thousands of dollars, but I got this breeding pair of cane toads for just $50. Well, that is cheap. Cheap but not free. I have a receipt and I expect to be reimbursed. I'd call you stingy, but I know where you work. Do they bite? Honestly, Andy, I don't know if toads even have teeth. They have tiny ones. And your hide is over an inch thick. Get a hold of yourself. So release Adam and Eve here, and they're fruitful and they multiply. And we don't pay for any of that. I know this isn't a scientific environmental impact study or anything, but didn't Adam and Eve fuck up the Garden of Eden? How fruitful are we talking here? So they have a few babies. How many can there be? I don't really think you've thought this through. I have a bad feeling. You have to do something about this phobia of yours. And to think I was complaining about walking on beetles, that was nothing compared to walking over these fucking toads, the cracking of their tiny bones, the popping of their bloated bodies, the blood, so much blood. Tell me you have a solution. We, that's the both of us, may have underestimated how quickly they would reproduce, but only one of us is the responsible elected official while the other one's just a waitress. Maybe you should stick to pouring coffee and wiping up syrup. I knew this would happen. This reminds me of a parable. A king was once so pleased with one of his sages, he promised him any reward he could name. The sage asked for a grain of rice to be placed on the first square of a chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, 8 on the fourth, and so on. And when they got to the last board of the chess, we're not in the mood for parables. I think I have an answer. I made contact with a guy who imports exotic animals illegally. I didn't hear that part. And he has a couple of Tasmanian devils that he can ship to us. And how much is this going to cost? Due to the delicate and surreptitious nature of the transaction and the high shipping fees, it's going to cost us $2,000. I really don't like the sound of this. Those animals are supposed to be vicious. Don't you even think about mentioning the Warner Brothers cartoon. But what happens next? Are we going to be overrun by rapacious marsupials? I checked, and the females are good for just 4 mating cycles and 12 offspring, so the numbers shouldn't get out of control. You know, a lot of this is your fault. Think of me as the cat in the hat, mischievous but endearing. He makes a big mess, but he tidies it up good as new before Mom gets home. All right. And how are we acquiring these horrible little creatures? We're to bring a paper bag full of non-sequential 20s to the railroad trestle at Rural Route 4. We wait for nightfall, and with a flashlight we signal Morse code for narc. That's an old smuggler's joke. And then they'll show up to make the exchange. Terrific. Anything else? Yes, they'll be jumpy and heavily armed, so come alone and don't make any sudden movements. Evening all. I should really have called a town meeting, but I didn't want to make everybody crunch their way to town hall. I came in here to get drunk, but since I do have an audience, I might as well make an announcement, so if all of you present can just pass the word. Sure thing. Go ahead. The Tasmanian devils we purchased at great costs are both dead. It turns out that cane toads are very, very poisonous. I'm going to try to find another solution, but that's where things stand for now. Don't worry about it. I'm glad you're all so understanding. I was expecting you to be furious. It's strange, but I didn't see that many toads coming over. I didn't hear that horrible crunching sound coming from my tires at all. There's been a development. You see, I was frying up omelets for the breakfast buffet, and I was trying to keep the toads out of the pan, but I was really hungover, so I thought, fuck it. Glad to hear you're keeping up standards. So a couple toads ended up in the omelets, and it turns out they're fucking delicious. And they're also poisonous. Only to mammals, stupid frail mammals. Shredded and sprinkled over pizza, they make a wonderful topping. I've been throwing them in the deep fryer as fast as my snow shovel can scoop them up. Really? Really? I've been serving deep-fried cane toad along with over 30 dipping sauces. We have medium, hot, atomic, Scottsdale, Arizona, sriracha, honey mustard, Game of Thrones. What the fuck is in a Game of Thrones dipping sauce? Just between us, that one's just expired ketchup and pepper. But can you say bandwagon? It's my #1 seller. You're a marketing genius. They're nearly all gone. It's a shame there weren't more of them. Great. Then before they are all gone, I'll have an osmata and a dozen toads with Scottsdale, Arizona sauce. That sauce is pretty hot. It's 5 fire engines on my scale of 5. Then a side of ranch as well, but not expired if you please.